The outcast of Nova Haven. Nova Haven hung like a jeweled spider web against the backdrop of endless space, its crystalline spires and luminescent bridges creating an intricate lattice of light and shadow. The space station represented humanity's greatest achievement in cosmic architecture, a testament to their mastery over the void. Yet within this marvel of human engineering, not all stories glowed with the same brilliance. In the uppermost tier of Nova Haven's elite residential sector, the Vandermeer family's palatial suite sprawled across an entire level, its windows offering an unobstructed view of the nearby nebula's swirling colors. But in the forgotten maintenance corridors below, a different resident moved through the shadows, its presence barely tolerated by those who claimed ownership over it. Nexus wasn't like other bioengineered guardians. Where most were sleek, wolf-like creatures with metallic scales and precise movements, Nexus was different. Its form seemed to shift between solid and ethereal, with tendrils of bioluminescent energy that pulsed erratically along its spine. 6 eyes, arranged in an asymmetrical pattern across its face, gleamed with an intelligence that made most humans uncomfortable. Its limbs moved with an otherworldly grace that defied the traditional laws of biomechanics. The Vandermeers had commissioned Nexus as a status symbol, expecting a perfect specimen to showcase their wealth and influence. Instead, they received what they considered a mistake, a guardian that sparked whispers and stares rather than admiration. Rather than face the embarrassment of decommissioning such an expensive investment, they simply pretended it didn't exist. Kira Zhao, a young maintenance technician, was one of the few who saw beyond Nexus's unusual appearance. During her late-night shifts repairing the station's complex network of power conduits, she often encountered the Guardian prowling through the service tunnels. Where others saw a defect, she recognized something extraordinary. "They don't understand what they have," she whispered one night, sharing her meager dinner with Nexus in a forgotten maintenance hub. The Guardian's multiple eyes focused on her, each one shifting through different spectrums of light. "You're not a mistake. You're just ahead of their time." Nexus had never responded verbally, it wasn't designed for speech, but its consciousness resonated on frequencies that Kira somehow sensed. Tonight, however, something was different. The Guardian's energy patterns fluctuated with unusual intensity, its attention drawn to something beyond the walls of their hidden sanctuary. Following Nexus through the labyrinthine maintenance tunnels, Kira found herself in a section of Nova Haven she'd never seen before. The walls here were different, older, marked with symbols that predated human settlement. Nexus's bioluminescent patterns pulsed in harmony with faint glows emanating from the ancient markings. "This shouldn't be here," Kira breathed, running her fingers along the alien script. Nova Haven was built less than 50 years ago. These markings, they look thousands of years old. Nexus pressed its form against a particular section of the wall, and the impossible happened. The Guardian's unusual energy patterns synchronized with the ancient technology, creating a cascade of light that transformed the maintenance corridor into something else entirely. A doorway materialized, leading to what appeared to be a vast chamber that couldn't possibly fit within Nova Haven's known dimensions. Before either of them could investigate further, alarms blared throughout the station. The Vandermeer family had finally noticed their guardian's absence, but their concern wasn't for Nexus's welfare. Their worst fear had been realized, their defective guardian had discovered something they had worked very hard to keep hidden. As security forces converged on their location, Kira made a decision that would alter the course of not just her life, but the fate of multiple civilizations. She placed her hand on Nexus's shifting form, feeling the pulse of ancient power flowing between them. "Whatever this is," she said, "whatever you found, it's important, isn't it? Important enough to change everything?" The Guardian's response came not in words but in a surge of images and emotions that flooded Kira's mind. She saw vast networks of interconnected civilizations, technologies beyond human comprehension, and a looming threat that made Nova Haven's grandeur seem insignificant. As the sound of approaching security forces echoed through the corridors, Kira squared her shoulders. "Then let's change everything. Together." With those words, Nexus activated the ancient doorway, and both Guardian and human stepped into a chamber that would reveal secrets the universe had kept hidden for millennia. Behind them, Nova Haven's alarms continued to wail, but ahead lay answers to questions humanity had never even thought to ask. The first step into that chamber would set in motion events that would reshape the understanding of not just humanity's place in the cosmos, but the very nature of consciousness and connection across the stars. The Guardian that had been cast aside as a mistake was about to prove that imperfection often held the key to the universe's greatest mysteries. Beyond the void. The ancient chamber hummed with energy that predated human civilization. Streams of light danced across walls covered in shifting symbols, responding to Nexus's presence like ripples in a cosmic pond. Kira stood transfixed, her maintenance uniform collecting dust from civilizations long forgotten. The security force's footsteps faded into nothingness as the doorway sealed behind them, leaving them in a space that defied the laws of physics. The chamber extended far beyond Nova Haven's known dimensions, its ceiling lost in shadows that seemed to swallow light itself. Nexus moved with newfound purpose, its asymmetrical eyes scanning the ancient technology with recognition that shouldn't have been possible. The Guardian's bioluminescent patterns pulsed in complex sequences, interfacing with the chamber's systems in ways that suggested this wasn't their first meeting. "You knew about this place," Kira said, realization dawning. "All those times you wandered the maintenance corridors, you were searching for it." The Guardian's energy patterns flickered in confirmation, revealing glimpses of memories that weren't part of its original programming. At the chamber's center stood a pillar of swirling energy, its surface etched with the same alien script that marked the walls. As Nexus approached, the pillar responded, its energy synchronizing with the Guardian's unique patterns. Suddenly, the chamber transformed into what appeared to be a vast control center, with holographic displays materializing around them. The images they showed were devastating. Countless worlds, connected by technology similar to what they'd discovered, were going dark. A creeping void was consuming entire star systems, leaving nothing but empty space in its wake. The threat Nexus had sensed was far worse than anyone could have imagined. Before Kira could process the implications, the pillar's energy surged, enveloping both her and Nexus in a cocoon of light. The chamber dissolved around them, reality itself seeming to fold and unfold like cosmic origami. When the light faded, they found themselves standing on a world that couldn't have been further from Nova Haven's sterile corridors. 3 moons hung in a lavender sky, casting multiple shadows across a landscape of crystalline trees and flowing rivers that seemed to defy gravity. The air shimmered with particles that responded to thought and emotion, creating aurora-like displays with every breath. They weren't alone. Emerging from structures that blended seamlessly with the natural environment were beings that Kira's mind struggled to comprehend. They appeared as shifting patterns of light and matter, their forms suggesting both infinite age and constant renewal. "Welcome, Guardians," a thought echoed in both their minds. "We are the Luminarii, and we have been waiting for you." The being that addressed them coalesced into a more definite form, its energy patterns remarkably similar to Nexus's own. "Your arrival was foretold in the Great Patterns, though we feared you might come too late." Kira's scientific mind raced to process what she was seeing. You're the ones who created the chamber. The ancient technology." Her eyes widened as she looked at Nexus. "And you're connected to them somehow." The Luminarii Elder's form rippled with confirmation. "What you call Nexus is more than a bioengineered guardian. Within its pattern matrix lies the key to technologies your people discovered but never truly understood. The Vandermeers didn't create a defect, they accidentally accessed genetic memories that had laid dormant for millennia." The revelation hit Kira like a gravitational wave. Nexus wasn't a mistake, it was a bridge between civilizations, carrying within its unique form the knowledge that might save them all from the approaching void. But the Luminarii's world was dying. The void had already begun to eat away at the edges of their star system, consuming the very essence of reality itself. The crystalline trees were beginning to fade, their song growing fainter with each passing moment. "We have watched countless civilizations rise and fall, the elder continued, but never have we encountered one so blindly determined to ignore the signs of what approaches. Your people's dismissal of Nexus was symptomatic of a larger failing, the inability to recognize that imperfection often holds the key to survival. Other luminarii gathered around them, their forms creating complex patterns that Nexus began to mirror. Knowledge flowed between them in waves of light and emotion, revealing truths about the universe that human science had barely begun to grasp. The void, they learned, wasn't a natural phenomenon. It was the consequence of technologies wielded without wisdom, of civilizations that sought perfection at the cost of diversity. Each system it consumed added to its power, creating a cascade effect that threatened to unravel the very fabric of spacetime. As this knowledge filled her mind, Kira felt the weight of responsibility settle onto her shoulders. She was no longer just a maintenance technician, and Nexus was far more than an abandoned guardian. Together, they represented perhaps the last hope for multiple civilizations. But saving these worlds would require returning to Nova Haven, to the very people who had rejected Nexus and would likely dismiss their warnings as the ravings of a defective guardian and a low-ranking technician. The Luminaria Elder sensed her doubts. The patterns show many possible futures, young one. In most, the void consumes all. But in a few, in the futures where differences are embraced and ancient wisdom meets new understanding, hope remains. Nexus moved to Kira's side, its form now pulsing with newfound purpose and power. The Guardian had found its true heritage, but more importantly, it had found an ally who saw beyond surface appearances to the potential within. We need to go back, Kira said, her voice steady despite her fears. We need to warn them, make them understand. She looked at Nexus, seeing not the mistake the Vandermeers had rejected, but a being of incredible complexity and wisdom. Together. The Luminaria Elder's form brightened in approval. Then let us prepare you for what lies ahead. For when you return to your Nova Haven, you will face challenges far greater than mere prejudice. The Void has agents everywhere, and not all of them are aware of their role in what approaches. As the three moons continued their dance overhead, Kira and Nexus began their training, learning secrets that would either save their civilizations or witness their final moments. The crystal trees sang their ancient songs, and somewhere in the darkness between stars, the void continued its relentless advance. Return to Nova Haven. The return to Nova Haven felt like stepping from a dream into harsh reality. The station's artificial lighting seemed pale and lifeless compared to the luminescent world they'd left behind. Kira and Nexus materialized in the ancient chamber, their bodies still humming with the energy of the Luminari's power. They emerged from the hidden doorway to find Nova Haven in chaos. During their absence, which had lasted mere days in Luminarii time, 3 weeks had passed on the station. The Void's influence had already begun to manifest, subtle at first, but unmistakable to their newly trained senses. Random power fluctuations plagued the lower levels. Maintenance crews reported strange readings in the station's quantum core. Most disturbing were the reports of crew members experiencing shared nightmares of endless darkness consuming everything they loved. The Vandermeer family had launched a station-wide search, not out of concern for their missing guardian, but from fear of what secrets Nexus might reveal. Security forces patrolled the corridors with heightened frequency, their weapons now equipped with void tech modifications that made Kira's skin crawl with recognition. They're already using it, she whispered to Nexus as they moved through the maintenance tunnels. The void technology, they're incorporating it without understanding what it really is. The Guardian's energy patterns pulsed with concern, its multiple eyes scanning the modified weapons that seemed to drink in surrounding light. Their first stop was the quantum engineering lab where Kira's old friend, Dr. Rashid Hassan, worked. If anyone would understand the scientific implications of what they'd discovered, it would be him. They found him alone in his lab, surrounded by holographic displays showing disturbing anomalies in spacetime around the station. Rashid didn't scream when they appeared. He simply stared at Nexus, noting how the Guardian's form had changed, becoming both more ethereal and more defined. I've been tracking quantum disturbances throughout the station, he said without preamble. Something's wrong with the very fabric of space around us. But you already know that, don't you? Over the next hour, Kira and Nexus shared everything they'd learned. The Luminaria's warnings, the true nature of the void, and Nova Haven's unwitting role in its spread. Rashid's face grew increasingly pale as he correlated their information with his own findings. The Vandermeers, he said finally. They've been pushing for integration of new technology into the station's systems. Technology they claimed would revolutionize space travel. But these readings. He gestured to his displays. They match exactly what you're describing. They're actually accelerating the void's approach. Before they could discuss further, alarms blared throughout the station. But these weren't the normal security alerts, these sounded different, ancient somehow. The hidden chamber they'd discovered was responding to something, and the vibrations were resonating through Nova Haven's entire structure. Through Nexus's enhanced senses, they perceived a terrible truth. The void had arrived faster than even the Luminariae had predicted. A massive tear in spacetime was forming at the edge of the station's sensor range, its darkness deeper than the surrounding space. Station security forces burst into the lab, led by Isabella Vandermeer herself. She stopped short at the sight of Nexus, her perfect composure cracking for just a moment. The Guardian had changed dramatically from the awkward creature she'd rejected. Now it radiated power and purpose, its very presence making the void tech weapons carried by her security team sputter and fade. So, she said, her voice tight with controlled fury, our wayward Guardian returns. And with such interesting new modifications. Her eyes narrowed as she studied Nexus's transformed appearance. I don't know what you've discovered, but that technology belongs to the Vandermeer family. Your very existence is our intellectual property. Kira stepped forward, her time with the Luminariae having given her a confidence she'd never possessed before. You're wrong, Ms. Vandermeer. Nexus never belonged to you. What you thought was a failed experiment was actually a key to saving everything you're about to destroy. The station shuddered again, more violently this time. Emergency lights flashed as reports flooded in from every sector. The tear in spacetime was growing exponentially, its edges now visible to the naked eye through the station's observation windows. Listen to me, Kira pleaded, pointing to Rashid's displays. The technology you've been implementing, it's not what you think it is. It's eating away at the fundamental forces holding reality together. The void isn't just coming for Nova Haven, it's coming for everything. And you're helping it. Isabella's composed mask slipped further as she looked at the readings. For the first time, doubt crept into her expression. The security team shifted uncomfortably as their weapons continued to malfunction in Nexus's presence. The Guardian moved then, its form flowing like liquid starlight. Its multiple eyes focused on Isabella as it projected a series of images directly into her mind, the Luminariae's dying world, the countless civilizations already lost to the void, and the terrible future awaiting them all if they continued down their current path. Isabella staggered under the weight of these visions, catching herself against a console. This can't be right, she whispered. We were promised power. Control over the very fabric of spacetime itself. By whom? Rashid demanded, his scientific curiosity overtaking his fear. Who gave you this technology? Before Isabella could respond, every screen in the lab blazed to life. A face appeared, or rather, the suggestion of a face, formed from swirling darkness that seemed to devour light itself. Its voice came not from speakers but from the vibrating air itself. By me, it said, its words leaving frost on the surfaces they touched. And I've come to collect on our arrangement. The void had given them its technology freely, knowing they would use it. Knowing their desire for power and perfection would blind them to its true purpose. Now it had all the access it needed to consume Nova Haven from within. As darkness began seeping through the station's walls, Kira looked at Nexus, then at Rashid and Isabella. The Luminariae prepared us for this moment, she said. But we can't fight it alone. The only way to stop what's coming is together, all of us, imperfections and all. The station trembled again, and in that moment of crisis, former enemies would have to decide if they could trust each other enough to save not just Nova Haven, but reality itself. The darkest hour. Darkness crept through Nova Haven's corridors like living ink, consuming light and leaving behind a cold that went beyond the physical. The void entity's laughter echoed through the station's quantum communications network, distorting every transmission into fragments of cosmic horror. In the quantum engineering lab, Kira, Nexus, Isabella Vandermeer, and Dr. Rashid Hassan watched as their reality began to unravel. The void tech weapons had completely failed, their artificial power nothing compared to the true darkness that had spawned them. The maintenance tunnels, Kira said suddenly, her mind racing with knowledge the Luminarii had implanted. They're not just service corridors, they're part of an ancient defense grid. The same civilization that built the chamber, they built Nova Haven's foundations. Isabella's perfect composure had crumbled, replaced by desperate determination. That's impossible. Nova Haven was built by Vandermeer Corp 47 years ago. We have all the documentation. You built on top of something far older, Rashid interrupted, his fingers flying over holographic displays. Look at these readings. The station's quantum core, it's not just a power source. It's responding to the void's presence like an immune system fighting an infection. Nexus moved to the center of the lab, its form now blazing with internal light that pushed back the encroaching darkness. Through their shared connection, it showed Kira a vision of Nova Haven's true nature, not just a space station, but a nexus point in a vast network designed to maintain the stability of spacetime itself. We need to get to the quantum core, Kira announced. The Vandermeers didn't just accidentally create Nexus, they accidentally tapped into ancient genetic engineering programs when they built this station. The void wasn't giving you technology, Ms. Vandermeer. It was using you to disable the very systems designed to keep it out. The station shuddered violently as another section succumbed to the void. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut throughout Nova Haven, but the darkness seeped through them like they didn't exist. The temperature continued to drop, frost forming on every surface. The core is sealed, Isabella said, her breath visible in the freezing air. Even I don't have access during a full station emergency. Nexus's eyes pulsed with sudden understanding. It moved to Isabella, extending a tendril of pure energy. Images flowed between them, the truth about why the Vandermeer family had been drawn to this particular sector of space, why they'd felt compelled to build here. They weren't just wealthy industrialists, they were unwitting guardians, their bloodline encoded with keys to ancient systems they never knew existed. Your DNA, Rashid breathed, understanding dawning. That's why the void influenced your family specifically. You're not just the station's owners, you're its genetic keystones. Isabella's hands trembled as she absorbed this revelation. Everything her family had built, their entire legacy, had been orchestrated by forces beyond their comprehension. What do we do? The void entity's darkness pressed against the lab's windows, its false face leering at them. You do nothing, it said in its reality-distorting voice. Your species' time is over. Order will be restored. The chaos of organic life will be purged. But Nexus was already moving, its form encompassing both Kira and Isabella. The Guardian's transformed body served as a bridge between human and ancient technology, between present and past, between what was and what could be. The maintenance tunnels, Kira said again. They're not just corridors, they're conduits. The entire station is one massive quantum circuit, designed to channel energy in ways we never imagined. She looked at Rashid. We need you to overload the secondary power grid. Create a feedback loop. That could tear the station apart, he protested. The station's already being torn apart, Isabella countered, newfound strength in her voice. But on our terms this time. They moved as one, racing through corridors that grew darker with each passing moment. The void entity sent shadows to pursue them, twisted forms that mimicked human shapes but bent in impossible ways. Nexus's light kept them at bay, but even its power had limits. They reached the quantum core access just as the void began targeting the station's life support systems. The massive chamber hummed with energies that made human technology seem primitive by comparison. Ancient symbols, identical to those in the hidden chamber, covered every surface. Isabella pressed her hand to the access panel, her DNA unlocking protocols that had laid dormant for millennia. The core's protective shields dropped, revealing a spiral of pure energy that seemed to connect to other dimensions. The void entity isn't just consuming our reality, Kira explained as Rashid worked to modify the power grid. It's consuming all realities, all possibilities. It wants to reduce everything to a single, static state. No chaos, no change, no life. Nexus moved to the core, its form synchronizing with the ancient energies. Through their connection, Kira understood what had to happen. The Guardian hadn't been a mistake, it had been exactly what they needed, its supposed imperfections actually making it perfect for this moment. Nexus will channel the core's energy, she said. Isabella, you need to use your genetic connection to the station to direct it. Rashid, when I give the signal, trigger the feedback loop. The void entity broke through by using multiple points of quantum resonance. We're going to give it more resonance than it can handle. The entity seemed to understand their plan. The darkness pressed in from all sides, its voice booming through the station's very structure. You cannot stop entropy. Order must prevail. The experiment of life must end. But Isabella Vandermeer, who had spent her life pursuing an impossible standard of perfection, looked at the supposedly flawed Guardian who now blazed with power and purpose. She saw how its asymmetry, its strangeness, its very imperfection made it capable of saving them all. Life isn't an experiment, she said to the void. It's not about perfection. It's about adaptation, change, growth. She placed her hands on the core's control matrix. And we're not done growing yet. Nexus's light reached its peak, combining with the quantum core's power. Isabella's genetic keys unlocked the station's full potential. And at Kira's signal, Rashid triggered the feedback loop that would either save them all or tear reality apart. The void entity screamed as Nova Haven's true purpose awakened, not just a space station, but a linchpin in the universe's defense against cosmic entropy. Light exploded from every corridor, every maintenance tunnel, every hidden system that had waited millennia for this moment. As darkness and light clashed in a battle that bent the very fabric of space-time, the fate of not just Nova Haven, but all of reality, hung in the balance.